Hello everyone and welcome to What Culture. I'm Josh, joined today by Simon Gallagher, the light of my life, because this lucky man got to see Joker down in London on Monday and has lots of thoughts about it in time for its release tomorrow on Friday, or whenever you're watching this. You know, you might come back afterwards and let us know what you think. Please do down in the comments. Simon, what did you think of this movie?
Well, Josh, it is a movie.
It certainly is.
It's a very good movie, as
Okay.
it happens. When it was first announced, I was sort of the opinion that we didn't need a Joker origin because Heath Ledger's version had like the mythology and this mystery about him, and that was part of his appeal. But then I take it all back because the origin that they do here is very good, but it isn't the most important thing about the film.
Interesting.
So this whole film is basically an opportunity for Joaquin Phoenix to just Joaquin Felix. All
over the place.
All over the place. He's honestly so good. It's just an unbelievable performance.
Well, of course, when it comes to, Joker performances, like you mentioned Heath Ledger there, that has become sort of the definitive, de facto kind of supervillain performance in general for a lot of people. So I suppose we should jump straight into that. How does Joaquin Phoenix kind of, take on the role that so many people have so many expectations for, even though this is kind of a standalone thing set in a sort of Elseworlds universe? How does he not only make it his own, but is he even, is he as good as everyone is saying that he is?
I was obviously I saw some reviews before this came out, because it's been on the festival circuit, which is a strange thing for a Joker film to do. And I thought, you know what, there's absolutely no way this can be as good as they're saying it is. And I was sort of the opinion that because it's trying to be different, they're being a bit effusive in their praise because it's being different, and it doesn't really matter on the quality of the film. But honestly, he's just so good. It isn't entirely an Elseworlds film.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but it isn't like some suggestions have been like it's just taken the Joker name and then it's just doing whatever it wants with it, and basically they've sold it on the idea of it being a comic book film that isn't a comic book film in order for people to see it.
Yeah.
But that isn't true. So it has, like obviously you've seen what he looks like. He's the Joker. He's got lots of visual references to the comics. So the same sort of color schemes, and the Joker's daughter as well comes in with the orange waistcoat. And he's got the green hair, he's got the mask, he's got some elements of origin stories like have been brought in to create this new story. So it isn't entirely separate to things that you already know. But saying that, it's an entirely new Joker, which is the important thing. So you can watch this and you can watch all of the other ones, and they don't necessarily compete because all of them are so different.
Yeah.
Obviously, in our job, we rank all of these things.
It's on the site already.
Exactly, yeah. So it's natural that you're going to do that, but it's just, he's so good. He's so good.
Well, that's good, I suppose. It's interesting, like the sort of origin story, we're going to get a sort of definitive version of that, but it's interesting that you mentioned it's sort of more linked to kind of like the Batman mythos, or certainly, the source material that we might have been expecting, because even Todd Phillips, who directed the movie, has kind of been bigging up the fact that he went to Warner Brothers, he got $50 million and kind of, made the movie he wanted to make by using the Joker name, but is it more indebted to sort of the source material, and is there stuff there for kind of like comics fans or previous Batman fans to jump into? This isn't just sort of, like you said, a Joker movie just because it's got the Joker in it, essentially, which sounds weird, but...
No, it's very true. So Christopher Nolan's Batman films were accused of this a little bit, in that people were just like, it's a Batman called Bruce Wayne, but he's not in Gotham, so it isn't a Batman movie in the same way. But this sort of feels a bit more like a Batman comics film because Gotham is a character in it.
Cool.
So like it was in Tim Burton's films, for instance. Gotham might be a woman. Who knows? And in Joker, Gotham is as big a presence as as Gotham was in Tim Burton's films, because in the absence of Batman, who is the creator of Joker in all of the other films, essentially that's what their dynamic is.
Yeah.
In this film, Joker is a response to Gotham as opposed to a response to Batman. So you can't have this Joker without Gotham. So it has to be a sort of pure adaptation of the comics. That is the biggest part of the comics that it takes, is Gotham. Everything else is a little bit fast and loose. And there's another part, which I won't spoil, but it's very, very much taken off the page.
That sounds really fascinating to me. I didn't know it was going to be that in depth.
Yeah.
I guess when it kind of comes to, the Joker as a character, everyone sort of knew that Joaquin Phoenix was going to be good. His Joker might not have been good, but how was like the film around it? How does Todd Phillips, who really has a background in, comedy movies like The Hangover, which were kind of action focused more so than, a rom-com or something like that, but how does sort of he kind of flex his creative muscles within this space?
Yeah, it's really strange. So Todd Phillips was always going to be a weird prospect because he made The Hangover, and like you watch that film and you don't see anything that would lend itself to a Joker origin film. But Todd Phillips is also very clearly a very big Martin Scorsese fan. Like, he's a fanboy and he's studied him, and all of the observations in this film are very much like a Scorsese film. So all of the shots, the early 80s New York / Gotham, because it's very obviously just New York ported over. All of that looks like Scorsese. All of the character work that Joaquin Phoenix has done is a cross between Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. And if you've seen those films, that should excite you a lot, because if you don't like them, you're not going to like this movie, because that's how close they are. But Todd Phillips does really well. Some of these shots are really inventive. He could be up for Best Director.
Really?
And of course,
that good?
I would say so. It just depends on whether the Academy thinks, do we reward somebody who's very obviously making a film that's a love letter to somebody else?
Right, yeah.
So it's very well directed, but it's even better as a mimic of Scorsese.
This is what's kind of been worrying me when I've been watching the trailers and stuff, because even before we got any official footage, there were rumors that sort of Martin Scorsese was on board to executive produce, which I don't think eventually happened, but that DNA is very much present in the final movie. So is it just like mimicry, or does Todd Phillips put enough of his own stamp on it so that, he has his own visual style and that is entirely, unique to him and I guess this movie at large? Or
Yeah, it comes down in the middle, pretty much.
Okay.
So some of it is like, well, yeah, that's what Scorsese would have done. And you can't criticize that because Martin Scorsese is not a bad filmmaker.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty good. We don't have any other like superhero movies that look or feel like Martin Scorsese movies.
And it's very clever. Like, people make good living out of doing impressions.
Right.
But
that is such damning praise there, man.
I know it is. No, there are lots of things that Todd Phillips has done on his own here that are very good. But you can't separate the fact that it's very obviously a love letter to Scorsese, and that is one of the reasons to go and see it. I'm not saying it's a criticism of it. Like, you definitely should, especially if you're a Scorsese fan.
One of my big questions is, though, coming off the trailers, which, they haven't revealed too much, but they've kind of given us an outline of the plot. How much of what we think we know, without spoiling anything, is actually making it into the movie itself? Are there surprises? Does it play out like any differently to what we expect?
The biggest surprise for me was that it's surprising.
Interesting.
Which is a nice thing to say off the back of those trailers, because they weren't necessarily spoilerific, but you could see what was going to happen, or you assumed that. But the best thing that this film does, the cleverest thing, and the reason why it isn't a definitive Joker origin film is because it plays with the idea of fantasy and reality a lot of the time. So you're seeing this through, very obviously, an unreliable narrator, because it's the Joker.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing you expect from the comics Joker. And it sort of blurs the lines between what's real and what isn't.
That's cool.
And in the trailers, it sets up lots of things. Some of them are definitely real. Some of them could be fantasy. Some of them are completely opposite of what you think they are.
Again, without spoiling, but you've intrigued me so much, I've got to ask, like, how does that play into sort of the origin story itself? Is that kind of kept more ambiguous than we are sort of expecting, or is it still sort of this is how he became the Joker, essentially?
Some of it is very much what you think it is.
Right.
Just leaping into your head right now. But there's like a whole half of the origin that you don't know from those trailers.
Right.
And yeah, I'm not going to spoil it because I'm not
Please
that guy.
don't. I've got to ask
though, do want to see it,
about sort of the intensity of the performances. In a lot of reviews, your own, which is up on the website, The Ups and Downs, there's mentioned the intensity of Joaquin Phoenix's performance, obviously, but how that sort of blends into kind of depictions of mental health issues and the Joker's own kind of like fractured psyche. How are those elements handled? Because the tone for the whole sort of piece is, I can't quite get a handle on it. I don't know if it's going to be comedy, considering Todd Phillips's sort of background. I don't know whether it's going to be entirely intense or if there's going to be moments of levity. So how is that kind of like balance?
It's one of the most intense films I've seen in quite a long time. The performance in particular, it's sort of like watching Christian Bale in The Machinist, where it's like, this is so good, but I don't like it because it's too much. There's a lot of moments like that where I found myself like inhaling, gasping audibly at, I can't believe that he's just done that. The Joker, as opposed to the filmmaker, although it's Arthur, it isn't the Joker at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because when you want people to see a film because it's very good, you'll generally say, go and see it, it's really good.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily want to see this film again because it takes a lot out of you because of the subject matter. But at the same time, it is a comedy in some parts. It sort of plays with tone a lot. It goes back to the fact that it's the Joker who's telling you this story. So the Joker has like multiple different aspects of his character. We've seen it in the comics.
Yeah.
And the best way that they play into that is by jumping from like this little indie character portrait to Tarantino exploitation action film in little bits, in terms of the violence basically, to like outrageous comedy. Todd Phillips does have bits of his comedy in there.
Definitely.
It's just dialed up to like really dark sort of areas.
That kind of, again, reminds me of sort of King of Comedy, which plays a lot of its kind of subject matter for laughs, but at the heart of it is a very intense, twisted, dark story.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a good subtext, and the focus on mental health issues, which are getting increasingly focused on in films, but this film does it in a way that other films I don't think I've ever seen, where if somebody has a mental health problem in a film, usually they'll be helped in some way because you want there to be a redemption story for somebody who is ill. Or, at the other end of the spectrum, they're sort of villainized for it, so they're made out to be a monster, and you're like, well, it's because of their mental health. That isn't the case here, even though it looks like that's exactly what this film is going to be. It's in the this isn't spoiling anything because it's in the trailers. He talks about how his therapy that he's in isn't helping him, and he feels failed. And that focus, because that happens in real life all the time, people don't talk about it, and it's such a big, important part of the film. And that's why all of this talk about how it's going to possibly inspire people to do bad things, it might, but all films will. If you've watched Taxi Driver, or you've watched Falling Down, or you've watched Clockwork Orange, all of these things come up all the time. People say this will happen. What this film could also do is inspire people to look after people better. I mean, it's the most perverse way of going around it. And I wish Todd Phillips would be quiet. The stuff that he's saying is not helping at all. It's going to make people not want to go and see the film, which is an absolute travesty. So basically, it talks about a lot of really important, difficult things. And interpretation-wise, I would say that it's not trying to be provocative in a way that inspires, incites, anything like that, other than positive things.
Yeah, okay.
But it's going to inspire some people to
I think it's sort of like a kind of, like a Fight Club thing. When that came out,
exactly,
sort of, the main message of that movie was kind of like, taken out of context or overlooked by certain sections of people, which I guess is kind of, potentially inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, Fight Club, in a way, was willfully done in that respect. So it was obvious that Fight Club is obviously about toxic masculinity, and people were like, wow, this is like calling to my inner forgotten masculinity.
Yeah.
There is a little element of that, but Arthur's situation makes him such a very specific victim that it's difficult, or you would hope it's difficult, for people to go, you know what, that's me. I'm just like that guy, I could do that. There are other people in the film that people will rightly go, those people are me.
Yeah.
I could be inspired by them, but you're allowed to be inspired by them because the message is basically, as we know, Gotham is bad.
Right, okay.
So
See,
take from it that part.
The very sort of fact that we're having kind of this discussion about actual themes and, you know, deep narrative context is really, to me, I didn't expect this from this movie. From when it was first announced, I thought it was going to be, you know, an interesting kind of fun take on this character we all know, but it sort of felt like they were just sort of pushing the, ooh, it's a kind of anti-superhero movie, it's an R-rated superhero movie, instead of just leaning on that kind of, you know, style over substance approach, but it seems like it has genuine things to say and a lot of meat on its bones.
Yeah, I don't think Joaquin Phoenix would have made it if it hadn't been like that, and that makes a lot more sense once you've seen the film. It's great. It's got a lot of things to interpret. If I was like not scared of it as much as I am, I would go and see it lots of times because the Joker has 4 laughs. The Joker has at least 4 voices, and there are so many little parts of that performance that it will take lots of watching to go back and experience it properly.
What would you rate it out of 5?
I mean, I've given it 5 stars.
Full 5?
Yeah, it's really, really profoundly good.
One final question, because I know we mentioned it at the start. You know, you said you can't really rank them, but obviously this is whatculture.com and we're going to have to rank them. Is this the sort of best Joker performance, or are there other better ones?
I think, genuinely, it sits side by side with Heath Ledger's. That's a little bit of a cop-out, but it isn't, because Heath Ledger's performance is amazing.
Yeah.
This performance, if you take away the names of the Joker, you look at those 2 performances just as characters who have nothing behind them, this is better than Heath Ledger's because there's so much has gone into it. Heath Ledger's traded on mystery. Part of the appeal of him is that you don't know stuff. This one, you know everything about him, and Joaquin Phoenix has to sort of pour his skill into that vessel that exists. Heath Ledger has no vessel. This is just like amazing.
That sounds awesome, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you excited to see Joker? Have you already seen it? Please let us know your opinions down there and give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news and more delicious Joker content like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, joined by the lovely man that is Simon Gallagher.
Goodbye.
And we'll see you soon. Bye.